Hello everyone, so my name is Sarah Arms and I'm a Senior Academic Officer at NEDPro and also the co-lead for the UK MTK. And today I'm going to give just an overview of the MTK project in Scotland, focusing on what we have delivered across 3 of our phases, so phase 1, 2A and 2B, and what we've also found from the evaluation. So before I begin into the findings, just a bit of an overview and background. So a core part of the MTK approach is hands-on cooking, and we do this using menu templates. So here you can see examples of 3 menu templates which we have developed and used. So we have a Scottish menu, a South Asian menu, and a Mexican-inspired menu. And each menu was designed to be affordable, nutritionally balanced, whilst also respecting cultural food preferences. And these menus act as practical tools which are combined with nutrition and culinary education rather than just standalone recipes. So this slide shows how the menus are then paired with nutrition and culinary education. So, for example, each menu came with a clear recipe sheet with instructions and methodology, a nutritional breakdown, so this is the nutritional profile of each dish, and also a short did you know or education points. So, for example, here you can see that lentil salad is rich in fibre, and we give different sources of fibre as well as the importance of fibre on health. So the idea here was really to link cooking skills directly to nutrition knowledge rather than treating them as separate activities. So across the 3 phases of the project, we delivered over 20 education and training sessions. So phase 1 involved over 60 participants from Dundee and Angus. Phase 2 then expanded into 2 new communities, with 38 participants in total, and phase 2B included over 56 additional participants. So to evaluate the programme and just to go over some of the kind of data collection tools which we used a mix of quantitative and experimental tools. So participants were asked to complete a knowledge, attitudes and practice survey, and this was across all phases of the programme. We also asked participants to complete a facet questionnaire, but we did get feedback from the first phase that this was a little bit too cumbersome. So then moving forward in phases 2A and 2B, we then changed this to an interactive myth-busting quiz. And then also we conducted taste testing performers across every phase as well. So here are just a few kind of visual snapshots of that process in action. So where possible, we collected data before and after the sessions, alongside kind of more open feedback, quizzes and structured taste testing, as I mentioned. And this helped us to capture not just what people learned, but also how they experienced the food and the sessions themselves. So now moving on to some of our findings. So in terms of phase 1, we found that when comparing overall mean scores of pre and post intervention, that knowledge scores out of 5 increased, and they increased significantly by 12.3%. We also found that attitude scores increased slightly, so this was by 1.9%. And we found that practice scores slightly decreased by 5.9%. So this might indicate that while participants learned more about nutrition and developed more positive attitudes towards healthy eating, that they may have then struggled to then apply some of those improvements into their real-world settings. So moving on to phase 2A results, so we did find that the pattern looks slightly different here. And one thing to note is that for this particular phase, the KOP data only totaled 17 respondents. So we had 8 pre-intervention and 9 post-intervention. And what we found was that average knowledge score increased by 4.7%. The most improvement was observed in the practice scores, which increased by 12.6%. Additionally, we also assessed the 3 C's, so confidence, commitment, and capability, and we saw that these also increased by 3.4%. Interestingly, and different to the first phase, we found that attitude scores actually declined. So it is possible, again, that as participants gain more knowledge and they become more aware of the complexities involved, this then results in a kind of shift in their attitudes. And lastly, our findings from the third phase, or phase 2B. So this phase actually showed the strongest overall outcomes. So we found that knowledge increased significantly by nearly 29%. We also found that attitudes improved significantly and practice scores improved as well, although this didn't quite reach statistical significance. So looking across all of the phases together, there are kind of a few key messages here. So what we found was that knowledge improved quite consistently across all of the phases, with the largest gains in phase 2B. Attitudes changes were a bit more mixed. We found that it improved in phases 1 and 2B, but it declined in phases 2A. We also do need to keep in mind the sample size of phase 2A and practices. So practices were also quite inconsistent, and this reinforces the idea that knowledge and attitudes alone don't always guarantee behaviour changes and practice change. So this really highlights the need for longer term and community embedded approaches. I also just wanted to highlight some of the taste testing results that we collected, and they were very positive overall. So all of the menu templates scored very highly across taste, texture, smell, appearance, as well as the overall rating. And the South Asian menu templates scored particularly well, but all of them scored above 4 out of 5. So this, again, just supports the idea that nutritious foods can also be enjoyable and tasty. And lastly, I just wanted to share some kind of additional outcomes, so beyond just numbers, but thinking about kind of wider impacts, as well as some value-added highlights from the MTK project. So beyond just the session data which we've collected, the MTK successfully achieved strong community engagement. So we directly reached over 150 participants through our sessions alone, and many more through outreach activities. And a key outcome was the development of 5 MTK champions, and we now have other prospective champions. And these champions then went on to lead further education sessions and pop-up food selling events, really helping to kind of extend project impact within their communities. The MTK model was also tested across a range of real-world settings. So we delivered sessions with the University of St Andrews and St Leonard's School, so both within medical and school education, as well as expanded community workshops in East London, Arbroath, Dundee and Fife. Also at the 11th International Summit, the MTK champions catered for the gala dinner for over 50 guests, and this just demonstrates the potential for premium dining as a viable micro-enterprise pathway. Finally, the MTK featured throughout the Dundee Science Festival, which was a major flagship event and attracted over 1,500 attendees. So just in summary, the MTK in Scotland has demonstrated clear gains in knowledge, strong community engagement, and promising but also a bit challenging paths towards behaviour change. So thank you very much for listening.